In a world quick to judge, where a single glance can dismiss a lifetime of valor, one man's quiet courage transformed a moment of misunderstanding into a timeless legacy of honor that echoes beyond the gates he crossed. Welcome to Tales of Kindness, where we share stories of compassion, valor, and the unspoken acts that remind us of humanity's greatest strengths. Subscribe to our channel to witness more tales of quiet, courage, and inspiring kindness. Elijah Brooks, nearing his 80th year, moved with the measured gait of a man who had learned. Haste seldom yielded better results. His lean frame was clad in simple, pristine attire, neatly pressed gray trousers, a pale green button-up shirt, and a faded olive jacket that bore the marks of many winters. Despite his age, he held himself with a disciplined posture, a remnant of decades in uniform. On this cool Memorial Day morning, Brooks approached the main gate of Camp Sterling, a military base tucked in the Nevada desert. The base was holding its yearly commemorative ceremony, an event Brooks had never attended, despite residing just 25 miles away for over 4 decades. In his right hand, he carried 2 items, an old military ID, its corners worn smooth like the pages of a cherished novel, and a sealed envelope marked with what looked like official government tape. His face was calm as he neared the security post, his steps steady, his gaze fixed ahead. "Good morning," Brooks said to the guard, his voice soft but firm. "I'd like to visit the memorial site on base," he stated. Captain Ellis, the 28-year-old officer at the checkpoint, reached for Brooks' ID. New to Camp Sterling and restless with gate duty, Ellis had been stationed there less than a year. He examined the ID, its faded print catching his eye. "Sir, this expired in 1992, Ellis said, a faint grin tugging at his lips as he held up the card. "You can't seriously think this still works?" Brooks stood silently, his lined face betraying neither frustration nor shame, only a deep patience. "Happens all the time," said Sergeant Carter, another guard who had strolled over. Built like a wrestler, Carter's voice boomed across the post. "People try using outdated IDs or fake credentials." Brooks said nothing, politely extending his hand to retrieve his ID from Ellis, who was now chuckling openly. "To enter a military base, you need valid ID," Ellis went on, his tone patronizing. "You need to be an actual soldier, not just someone with an old card." A small group of guards and staff had gathered, drawn by Carter's loud remarks. Most smirked. A few looked uneasy but stayed silent. Brooks nodded once, pocketed his ID and envelope, and turned to leave, his movements calm but deliberate. He offered no argument or explanation. He began walking back toward the public lot. Inside the guard booth, Private Noah Carter, who had watched the exchange, felt a pang of unease. Unlike the others, he hadn't laughed. There was something about the old man's quiet dignity that felt out of place. Most would protest or plead, but Brooks had accepted the rejection with grace. Noah, 6 months into his first logistics post and the son of a lifelong soldier, had grown up on tales of the old breed who served in Korea and Vietnam. Something about Brooks stirred those stories. As the other guards dispersed, Noah slipped into the back room and dialed his aunt, who worked in military archives at the Pentagon. "Aunt Clara, it's Noah. Something odd just happened. An old guy tried to get on base with an ID from the 90s. The others laughed him off. But he didn't seem like the usual types we see. Could you check a name?" Elijah Brooks, probably commissioned in the 70s or earlier. As he hung up, Noah glanced out the window. Brooks had paused at a bench outside the gate, sitting calmly, as if waiting. "When everyone turns away, only duty remains," Noah whispered, recalling his father's favorite saying. Word of the gate incident spread quickly among the base's morning crew. Maria Delgado, a 25-year veteran of the base mess hall, overheard guards joking about the old guy with the ancient ID as they grabbed coffee. "What did he look like?" Maria asked, drying her hands on her apron. "Thin, maybe 80, stood real straight," a guard replied. "He had an ID from 92, can you believe it?" Maria's face shifted. "Was he wearing an olive jacket?" "Quiet, didn't argue?" "Yeah, that's him." "You know him?" Maria nodded slowly. "Saw him once. Back in '87, there was an explosion at the munitions warehouse. 2 men were trapped. That man walked into the fire and pulled them out, one at a time. Never got his name, but I'd know that face anywhere. The guard looked doubtful. Come on, Maria, that'd make him a hero. Heroes don't get turned away. Maria shrugged. Ask Colonel Freeman if you don't believe me. He was one of the men saved. The story spread. A young comms officer who overheard. Maria snapped a blurry photo of Brooks on the bench and posted it to the base's internal chat with the caption, "Anyone know this vet? Turned away at gate?" But Maria says he saved lives in the '87 warehouse fire. Replies poured in. Looks like the guy in the photo in Colonel Freeman's office. My uncle served in the '70s. Says that might be Elijah Brooks, but he thought he was dead. Wasn't there an Elijah Brooks who got a classified medal in Vietnam? Meanwhile, Noah waited by the staff phone. 20 minutes after his call, it rang sharply. Private Carter, this is Colonel Ramsey from the Pentagon. I need the officer in charge of your checkpoint now. Put me on speaker. Noah's pulse quickened as he summoned Captain Ellis. Sir, Pentagon's on the line for you. Ellis adjusted his uniform, confusion flickering across his face. This is Captain Ellis. Captain, this is Colonel Thomas Ramsey, Special Operations Archives. Put this call on speaker. Ellis complied, his unease growing. The room went quiet as Ramsey's voice filled the space. The man you turned away is retired, Colonel Elijah T. Brooks, former commander of Special Forces Alpha Unit. 1970 to 1978. His clearance is still active, despite the expired ID under General Order 119C. Sergeant Carter, lounging against the wall, snapped upright. Ellis paled. Sir, we didn't know... Ramsey cut him off. Colonel Brooks is here for the memorial ceremony, which he's entitled to attend. He led the most effective reconnaissance team in Vietnam and spearheaded the Laos POW rescue in 1974. A murmur rippled through the room. The Laos mission was the stuff of legend, a classified operation where a small unit freed 25 American POWs from a remote enemy camp without a single loss. A vehicle is en route, Ramsey continued. Extend every courtesy to Colonel Brooks. As if on cue, a black military SUV rolled up. 3 senior officers stepped out, led by a decorated colonel with a chest full of ribbons. I'm Colonel Morgan. Where's Elijah Brooks? Ellis pointed silently to the bench. Morgan nodded and marched toward Brooks, his team in tow. Noah watched from the window as Morgan approached. Brooks snapped a sharp salute. Brooks stood slowly, returning the gesture. Words were exchanged, hands clasped, and Brooks handed Morgan the envelope from his pocket. 15 minutes later, they returned to the gate. Ellis and Carter stood at attention. These gentlemen are entering under my authority, Morgan declared, his tone final. As they passed, he paused. That ID you marked? It has a transmitter. Colonel Brooks activates it once a year on Memorial Day to confirm he's alive. We track it. Ellis swallowed hard. Sir, I didn't know. No, you didn't, Morgan said coolly. You saw an old man with an expired ID and judged. That man led missions you'll never be cleared to read about. He saved more lives than everyone here combined. As the group moved on, Noah turned to Ellis. Sir, what just happened? Ellis rubbed his face. We just disrespected a legend, that's what. Carter shook his head. Laos rescue? That's like yelling at a war movie hero. Noah's aunt called back later, her voice tense. Elijah Brooks isn't just a retired colonel. Post-Vietnam, he ran the most covert recon unit in history. His files are still sealed. Why would he just accept being turned away? Noah asked. After a pause, she replied, Men like Brooks don't need to prove themselves. They know their worth. The mission was all that mattered. As the day unfolded, more details emerged. Brooks had lived quietly in a small Nevada town since retiring, shunning publicity and military events. The envelope he carried held letters to the families of soldiers, lost under his command, names etched on the base's memorial. For 40 years, he'd written them annually, but never delivered them in person until now. By noon, Camp Sterling buzzed with activity. The base commander ordered an honor reception for Colonel Elijah Brooks' soldiers, scrambled to line the main road. An honor guard assembled, and the memorial site was readied for a VIP. Ellis, still rattled, stood stiffly at his post as the procession returned. Brooks, still in his plain clothes, declined a uniform, but carried himself with undeniable authority. As he neared the gate, every soldier saluted, a gesture reserved for top brass. Brooks returned it with precision, his weathered hand steady. The base's comms channels lit up. Urgent, Colonel Elijah T. Brooks, Retun, on base for memorial visit. Full honors protocol. Media blackout Brooks' presence. Veteran forums linked to Camp Sterling exploded. Brooks is alive? Thought he passed years ago. My dad served under him in '72. Said he was the best officer ever. He never left a man behind. Accounts from veterans who served with Brooks flooded the base's digital boards. I was a medic in Vietnam when Brooks led a recon mission. We were ambushed for 48 hours. He kept us alive until choppers arrived. Brooks turned down a Bronze Star in '75. Said the team deserved it. Not him. Ellis, relieved from duty, sought out Brooks at the memorial wall, where the old colonel stood. Silently before names from Southeast Asia. Colonel Brooks. Sir, Ellis began, his voice low. I need to apologize for this morning. I was rude and judgmental. Brooks turned, studying Ellis without expression. After a long moment, he spoke. You were doing your job, Captain. No, sir, Ellis said. I followed rules, but I failed to respect a veteran. That's my job, and I fell short. Brooks nodded. The fault's not yours. It's in how you're taught to judge people. In my time, we looked at the man, not just his papers. That's been forgotten. Ellis felt the weight of those words. By afternoon, the base commander had organized a gathering in the auditorium. Over 200 recruits, most unaware of Brooks until today, packed the seats, with officers lining the walls. The commander, a one-star general who'd flown in upon hearing Brooks was on base, took the podium. Today, we're honored to have Colonel Elijah Brooks, whose service remains partly classified. He's agreed to address our newest soldiers. Brooks walked to the stage, his tall frame still commanding despite his age. He scanned the room silently. I didn't come for recognition, he began, his voice quiet but clear. I came to honor men who didn't come home, whose names are on that wall. He paused, eyeing the young recruits. Honor isn't in the rank or the ID. It's how you act when no one's watching. It's the promises you keep when it's tough. The room was still as Brooks went on. I've never spoken about my service, not because it's secret, but because the work mattered, not who did it. My men understood that. Their respect was enough. His gaze found Ellis at the back. This officer at the gate did what he thought was right with what he knew. I don't blame him, but remember, sometimes the most important things aren't on the surface. Afterward, as Brooks navigated a crowd of personnel eager to shake his hand, Sergeant Carter approached emotional. Sir, my dad was at Da Nang in '73. He said a colonel named Brooks saved his platoon. Was that you? Brooks studied him. Your father's name? James Carter, 3rd Infantry. Brooks nodded. I recall the mission. Your father carried a wounded man 2 miles. Brave soldier. Carter's jaw dropped. He never told me that. The brave ones don't, Brooks said simply. Later, the security team made a gesture. Ellis, after clearing it with superiors, ordered a bronze plaque for the checkpoint where Brooks was turned away. It would read Brooks Gate in honor of silent courage. As Brooks prepared to leave, a senior intel officer approached. Colonel, those letters you've written to the families, they've been delivered, all of them. Brooks looked stunned. How? I never mailed them. You wrote the names and addresses, the officer said. Each year after your transmitter signal, we checked on you. We found the letters and sent them. Brooks stood motionless, processing. He'd written to the families of his fallen men for decades, thinking it a private act. Learning they'd reached their recipients shook him. The Thompsons in Ohio, the Garcias in Texas. The officer nodded. All of them. Some families saved every letter. As dusk fell, Brooks stood at the memorial wall, tracing names in the stone. Officers watched respectfully from a distance as he honored his lost comrades. As he turned to leave, he spoke to the base commander. Words later engraved on the Brooks gate plaque, I came only to honor those I couldn't bring home. That evening, Brooks left the base with full honors. Ellis saluted perfectly as the vehicle passed, and Brooks returned it. their eyes meeting in mutual understanding. This ID expired in 1992. Captain Ellis had laughed, holding up the weathered card. Elijah Brooks stood silent, offering no defense. "You need to be a real soldier to enter," Ellis added. But minutes later the phone rang, and a voice from the Pentagon delivered a single, stunning revelation. "You're dealing with the former commander of Special Forces Alpha Unit, who had failed to recognize the legend standing before them." The incident at Camp Sterling's Gate rippled beyond the base, becoming a quiet legend in military circles. By the next morning, whispers of Colonel Elijah Brooks' visit had reached veteran networks across Nevada. Posts on online forums swelled with stories from those who'd served with him. "I was a grunt in '71, one wrote. "Brooks led us through a jungle ambush. Never raised his voice, just got us out. Thought he'd passed years ago." Another added, "He trained my CO in '74, said Brooks. Could read a battlefield like a book." At the base, the mood had shifted. The security team, led by a chastened Captain Ellis, held a debriefing to review the incident. "We judged too quickly," Ellis admitted to his team, his voice heavy. "Procedure matters, but so does perception. We missed the man behind the ID." Sergeant Carter, usually brash, nodded solemnly. "That's not a mistake we make twice." Private Noah Carter, whose call to the Pentagon had unraveled the truth, listened quietly, his respect for Brooks deepening. Meanwhile, Maria Delgado, the mess hall veteran, shared more details with curious co-workers. Back in '87, after he saved those men from the fire, he didn't stick around for thanks. Just vanished. That's who he is. Does the job, no spotlight. Her story prompted others to dig into Camp Sterling's archives. A faded logbook from the '80s mentioned an E. Brooks assisting in the warehouse incident. With a note declined commendation, the pieces were falling into place. By midweek, the base commander, General Hawthorne, issued a formal directive. All personnel were to undergo sensitivity training on veteran interactions. "Colonel Brooks' visit exposed a gap in our judgment," he wrote in a memo. "Honor doesn't expire with an ID card." The Brooks Gate plaque, now installed at the checkpoint, became a daily reminder. Soldiers passing through would pause, some saluting. Others reading the inscription, "Honor outlasts credentials." Elijah Brooks, unaware of the growing reverence, returned to his modest routine. His small home in the Nevada desert held no medals or military relics, only a single-frame photo of his old Alpha unit, their faces young and resolute. Each evening he sat at a worn desk, penning letters to the families of his fallen soldiers, a ritual he'd maintained for decades. Now, knowing those letters had reached their recipients, he wrote with a new sense of purpose, his words carrying the weight of shared loss and enduring respect. One such letter, addressed to the family of Private Daniel Harper, a soldier lost in the Laos mission, read, "Daniel was a light in the dark. He carried hope for all of us. I carry him still." The Harper family, who had received Brooks' letters annually, kept them in a wooden box, each one a testament to a commander who never forgot. "We thought we were alone in our grief," Daniel's sister wrote in a veteran's newsletter. "Colonel Brooks made sure we weren't." Back at Camp Sterling, Private Noah Carter found himself reflecting on the incident during late-night shifts. He began researching Brooks' era, poring over declassified Vietnam and Laos reports. Though most of Brooks' missions remained redacted, fragments painted a picture of a leader who prioritized his men above all. Noah shared his findings with his platoon, sparking discussions about legacy and leadership. "He didn't need to shout who he was," Noah said. "His silence said it all." The Pentagon, too, took note. Colonel Ramsey, who'd made the fateful call, requested a review of veteran access protocols across military bases. Men like Brooks shouldn't face barriers to honor their fallen, he told a closed-door meeting. The review led to a new policy. Any veteran with a verifiable service record, regardless of ID status, could apply for escorted base access on ceremonial days. The policy, quietly dubbed the Brooks Rule, was implemented without fanfare. As the next Memorial Day approached, Camp Sterling prepared for Colonel Brooks' return. This time, the base commander personally invited him, sending a letter to his home.